So the poem I'm going to be covering today is Marianne Baruch's Hospital. The poem was published in 2006, and she is a professor at Purdue University, or was. She's professor emeritus still at Purdue University. Baruch is known for taking moments of time and turning them into unrecognizable experiences through the process of defamiliarization. I'll start out with reading the poem once, and then I'll break it down into two smaller sections. So, it seems so. I don't know. It seems as if the end of the world has never happened in here. No smoke, no dizzy flaring except those candles you can light in the chapel for a quarter. They last maybe an hour before burning out. And in this room, where we wait, I see them pass the surgical folk, nurses, doctors, the guy who hangs up the blood drop. Ready for lunch, their scrubs still starched into wrinkles, a cheerful green or pale blue, and the end of a joke, something about a man who thought he could be, what? I lost it in their brief laughter. So, it's one stanza. And with the poem being one stanza, it's called a monostitch. And you can see that there's also like no rhyme scheme. It's very much free verse. And it all takes place in a hospital, but it's definitely like broken up. You could see where there's a drop line, and in this room, usually a drop line would be like one sentence and it starts and then would finish with an indent. But this one is starting a whole new sentence, which is why I think it's basically she's moving into she says, and in this room, she's moving. So we're out in the hallways almost, and then we're moving into one room in this hospital. And so I think the setting's really important. I mean, the name of the poem is Hospital, but it's important because nobody really feels good in a hospital. Nobody like goes to hospital thinking it's going to be warm and fuzzy. Like, it's a cold and clinical experience. It can be scary. Nobody expects to go there and be treated like royalty or something. And usually you end up there at the worst times in your life. So it's really interesting. On that first section, she says, I don't know, it seems as if the end of the world has never happened in here. For some people, like, the worst day in their life is had in a hospital. So I think it's interesting that, okay, you think of Grey's Anatomy. People will have, like, an awful experience in this hospital, but all the doctors and nurses and workers are thinking about different things. They're not thinking about your family member dying. So they're smiling at you. They're saying, oh, have a good day. Do you want a snack? Do you want food? When all you're thinking about is, am I going to die? Am I going to live? Is my family member going to die or going to live? So I think that's really interesting that she included that there, because it also seems like maybe I couldn't find anything if she had a particular illness or was dying from an illness at one time. I mean, she's still alive today. But it's almost like the speaker has seen the end of the world, and this is not what it looks like. She's seen the worst point in her life, and this is nothing compared to it. So I thought that was really interesting. This next section is, so no smoke, no dizzy flaring, except that's before this section, but it's like there's no markers that danger is ahead, which is interesting. But at the same time, she talks about the chapel, which I think that's a very common theme, a very common thing that is used in like film and literature, like a hospital chapel. It makes me think of Nurse Jackie, which had a lot of stuff in hospital chapels, and not a lot of scenes in hospital chapels. And it made me think, like, are hospital chapels considered places of God? Like, are they just the best that they can do, or are they actually considered like worshiping places? Like, usually people go there, it's all they have. But does it even matter? So it's important that she says the candles you can light in the chapel for a quarter, because like chapel for a quarter, is a quarter all that your life is worth? You go, you light this candle, you say a prayer. Is that what you're worth in the eyes of God? Is a quarter enough to get you into heaven if you do die? And if not, is it enough to get you to live another day with the help of whatever being you believe in? That was really interesting to me. I mean, I know where I grew up, the hospital had like a donation box, so it didn't cost money to light a candle or something. But at the same time, it makes you think of, what does that do? Does it do anything? Is it just for the person who's there with you? Is it just for you to help you feel better mentally? Because it does nothing for you physically, unless that's what you believe. But I mean, scientifically, you're doing nothing. And I thought it was really sad. And so then we get to this part where it says, and in this room where we wait, I see them pass the surgical folks. So it's almost like she's taking you down the hallway, and then you go in a room. And then when you get in that room, it's different. Like, it feels very bright is how I read it. Like, it's a bright setting with a lot of like, everything around her is not how she is feeling. She is feeling scared, lonely, uncomfortable, nervous, and she describes these doctors, they're wearing cheerful green or pale blue, like they're wearing pastels. She's in a hospital gown, which means like it's not even closed in the back, which is an awful feeling, and it's just scary all around. But she's looking at these people, they're cracking jokes, like at the end of the joke, something about a man who thought he could be what I lost it in their brief laughter. That, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so the surgical folk. She calls them the surgical folk. That is interesting to me. It seems a little like she's judging them, which I totally understand, because I felt the same in hospital experiences and like healthcare experiences. I felt very similar feelings about the way that people talked, healthcare workers. But so it's interesting that she says the guy who hangs up the blood drop. So he's thinking about lunch while he's hanging her blood drop. This blood bag is her life right now. And I put this picture of this blood bag, but there's also a saline bag. So like people, this is like a big thing. Like people are living because of these bags that are giving them life, but without the bags, they die. And it makes you think, like, at that point, are you even living? I wrote in my notes that yes, this is a new scene, but it's also her realizing, is she still alive? Is she about to have a surgery? Is she recovering from a surgery? Is she having treatment, or is she recovering from a treatment? Like, it made me think of maybe a cancer treatment. My great grandma, I would go to the hospital in Houma with her for a cancer treatment, and it was just the most awful thing. They used to take marrow out of her bones, and then she would get an IV for hours, and that was like once a month thing, and it was awful. But she seems by herself. She's by herself with these workers, and this blood drop, which to me is blood bag, but I hope I'm right. It seems like life is flowing from that bag into her, but I would feel like if that's how I was living, my life is not mine anymore. Like, is she in control of her life, or is this bag what she must rely on to continue? That was really, like, heavy in my head. And then, that was my cat. And then, so then we get to the end. I lose it in their brief laughter. So that is kind of like the nail in the coffin of her opinion on these people. Like, it seems that she's so appalled that they can just carry on while all this awfulness is happening. Like, this place looks nice, it's bright, it's full of color, and yet people are dying, people are sick and losing their family members or losing themselves, and it's almost like a hopeless situation. A hopeless situation, and she feels lost, and she's almost like baffled by watching these people interact like everything's okay. And I thought that was just really interesting. I think it speaks a lot to like the overall point of what we've been touching on this semester, and how people who are not affected by these things will not view it the same way. So if you've never lost somebody in your family or seen someone die in a hospital bed, you will not have the same reaction to this poem as someone who has had only positive experiences in a hospital. And I think it was really eye-opening when I read this to my grandma. Her reaction was like very serious. She was like, I don't want to talk about this anymore because I'm going to end up crying, and let's just change the subject. And that really struck a chord with me, and made me nervous about even doing this project and like talking to this camera right now. So I think it's really interesting. Like, if I were to read this to someone, I have friends who all their grandparents are still alive, all their parents are alive, everything. I mean, their life has been perfect. But what if they were to go into a hospital and for the first time see the worst moment of their life? Would they feel like this? Would they feel like lost and hopeless? Or would they even understand? I just think it's really interesting that she wrote this, and it seems like, I'm not saying she hasn't had any of these experiences, but I could not find anything about her having a terminal illness. I mean, she was born in 1950, and she's still alive. Her last book was published in 2021, and so she's still going. And this was 2006, so if she had a terminal illness, I think she would probably not be publishing still. That's all I got. Thank you for listening.